All right, we are here in the podcast. This is Matt, by the way, if you haven't figured out. I was trying to do a Jackson thing, like that's all right to start every episode. Jackson may be joining us. We'll see. He's in Bermuda on vacation. Shout out to him. My good friend, Bobby Dyer from Auburn, is joining us as a guest co-host, and he gets the honor of talking us through Auburn's first loss in regulation for the year. And so welcome, Bobby, and to everybody else. I'm sure you know this by now, but Auburn lost 63-62 to Florida on the road. And, you know, it was a really frustrating game in a lot of ways that we'll get into. So, Bobby, hello, welcome. Thank you for filling in. What were your kind of overall thought? We always talk about MVP to start, and Jackson doesn't like this, but I'm going to do it. He's not here anyway. It was obvious who the MVP was for Auburn tonight, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, just take one look at the box score, and you'll see that it was definitively Alan Flanagan with only, for once, only 2 turnovers in the game. He did not have more turnovers than points for once in his life. I mean, we were just talking about this before the show started. I mean, today was probably what a lot of people expected Auburn to look like this year. You know, before the season started, I think people expected that on most nights you'd see, you'd see Jabari dropping 28 points, shooting almost 50% from the field, playing 33 minutes, and then the rest of the team was just kind of, meh. But obviously we've seen a different narrative this year, and that's what's made Auburn so surprising. But today was the first time I really felt like all year where it was like, okay, if we didn't have Jabari today, like we would be so screwed. We wouldn't have a chance. I'm just looking at the box score. I mean, you can see the turnovers were just killer. You had 17 of them. KD by himself had 5. And I swear 7 of those turnovers from KD, he hurled them into the stands. And, it's one of those situations where you can't point to one specific thing and pin the loss on that. But I can't help but think a lot about those 4 or 5 plays where Flanagan or KD hurled the ball into the stands, just senseless turnovers. I think really killed Auburn.
Yeah, and I mean, there's no doubt Jabari was the main reason that this was a close game. I said it would have been stealing if Auburn had won this game. I guess we should set it up a little bit. I know a lot of people know this, but Florida's squarely on the bubble. This is by far their best opportunity at home against a top-tier team to kind of secure or work their way towards securing a berth in the NCAA tournament. If you know anything about college basketball, those teams are so dangerous, and I think everybody knew it. Auburn was like a 3-point favorite tonight. So there was just it was a huge game for Florida. They played like it. I thought they played like the more desperate team. I thought they defended Auburn beautifully. Perhaps better than anybody has. So I was really impressed with what Florida did. But the reality is that a lot of things have to happen for this Auburn team to lose in regulation. I think it lost in we're going to talk about a lot of the frustrations. We're going to talk about a lot of the issues. But, a lot of things had to happen for Auburn to lose this game. And really Auburn didn't do much right except for have Jabari Smith on the floor. So I'm still encouraged by that. It's a deflating loss in the sense that you had a chance to steal it. And it's deflating because of what it does to the SEC race. But Jabari was terrific. He's continuing to elevate his play. If we just have to get him a shot at the end of games when we have a chance to win, which is a big problem.
I was just going to say the reality is, like you were saying, Auburn did so much wrong, but they still, at the end of the game, they had it down a point with 7 seconds left, just enough time for Wendell to throw the ball away, and end up losing the game. And look, Florida did defend Auburn really well. And obviously their best defense of the game happened on the last possession, which is, as a Florida fan, when you want Florida to play its best defense. And so I got to tip my hat to them. They played Auburn really well. And there must be something about their defensive scheme denying the ball like close almost to half court that forced a lot of those turnovers out of bounds, right? Because then you didn't have an easy outlet pass back to the point guard, so you try to just chuck it across court. And KD Johnson thought that he would try doing his best Cam Newton impression. And
no football references, Bobby. No football.
Oh, I'm sorry. do his best Russell Westbrook impression and completely miss the bucket.
This is why I jumped on. I knew you guys would say the F word. I had to. I'm all the way from Bermuda. I had to jump on here to be the referee of no F word here.
I did not say the F word. I simply referenced noted Auburn legendary athlete of an undisclosed sport.
That's right.
Yeah.
That other sport.
Yeah.
Tell Jackson has crashed the call like I thought he might. He can't stay away. He had to watch part of this loss. He's back in. Jackson, give us your take on the game from Bermuda.
Well, I just wanted to jump on for a minute. Me and Matt had decided like I probably wasn't gonna be able to do these next 3 games, but I'm on like this forced quarantine kind of thing for the next like couple hours. It's how it is with Bermuda, whatever. So I was like, let me jump on real quick. And I wanted to welcome Bobby to the show, man. Good to see you again. It's been a while.
Thanks,
and
Jack.
man, it sucks. We finally lost a game like in regulation. I watched a good bit of it. The turnovers were brutal. It's great. Like you said, it's great to see Jabari keep going. I don't want to play them again in the SEC tournament or anything like that when it clearly Colin Castleton and this team know how to get Kessler in foul trouble. It sucks. There's people like really hating on Wendell right now. Like, we've had our ups and downs. We're starting to get ups and downs with Wendell now, and it's just, I don't know. If you go back to where we thought we had with Wendell, it's still like exceeding expectations. And also with Bruce, we've known this for how long now? He is not great with end of game stuff. We're like, man, the fast break stuff, the steals, the hustle, the recruiting, everything. If you had to pick one thing he's not good at, it's these end of game drawing up plays. And we've seen it a bunch this year. We've been super lucky to do what we've done. We had Wendell just go take a charge basically and score on Georgia. We had KD just decide to go do it. None of these are like great plays he's drawn up. So don't necessarily blame this on Wendell. Wendell gets the ball at the end because he's the point guard, and he does need to figure out how to get the ball to this best player with 7 seconds left. But he's also a college kid. He's like a sophomore or junior. Like, somebody draw something up for this boy. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree, man. I thought like whatever the call was, if there was a set, it wasn't a very good set, and they needed a different one because like, you have to get the ball to Jabari. Set as many screens as you have to in 6 seconds, but you got to get him the ball. So you're absolutely right, man.
And if you do it once, like, okay, I was willing to let go. Wendell was the only reason we had a chance in that Arkansas game. If you remember, he made a ton of great plays down the stretch. I was okay. I didn't like it, but I'll live with it. Twice in a couple of weeks. And when Jabari's this hot in 2 straight games, and Bruce said in the post game, I haven't watched it, but I saw a quote. They had 2 timeouts left even after the one they called. He's like, I should have called timeout when I saw that they were. I think they thought there was going to be extending, and it looked like they were going to extend the defense. And I thought the same thing live. I said, oh well, if they extend, get Wendell going downhill, man. And it's like they showed that, and then immediately kind of did this mush zone in the middle of the lane, expecting Wendell to come down there. So it's like they were perfectly prepared, I think, for what we tried to do. I totally agree, though. It's got to be Jabari. It's very frustrating, not only to not get a shot up when you're in that situation or draw a foul. Like, there's so many ways we could have won that game at the end. It's frustrating that your best guy doesn't get the ball. And I think that's what everybody's frustrated. Hopefully it's more directed at that than like Wendell, because Wendell's been a huge part of why Auburn's in the position they're in right now.
Yeah. I mean, he was kind of put in no man's land because nobody's like Walker kind of tried to set a screen for him. But even then Auburn as a whole on that sequence just kind of looked lost. Maybe not lost, but they looked like they didn't really have a plan except Wendell gets to the basket. And that was the whole thing. And when Florida took that away, there was no plan B.
Well, let's zoom out a little bit, right? Like, let's look overall. Jackson, you got anything? Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not going to stay on much longer. I just wanted to come in and say, hey, and I had, this is the one chance I had, and just, Bermuda Auburn Club's back. It's dark. You can't see it here, but it sucks we're on a loss. I'm hoping, maybe if I can at least get some pregame notes in on those other 2 games, that'll be big. I know you guys, everybody's so desperate to hear about what's going on with me. It's not about the basketball, Right. But anyways, Bobby, take it away. Matt, take it away. I'm glad y'all are doing the Lost podcast. Maybe I'll just quit. We finally lost one in regulation. I'm out for the next while. So, all right, guys. War Eagle.
War Eagle Jackson.
All right. So what I was saying was let's zoom out a little bit, right? Let's talk about what happened in this game. So Auburn has had this problem on the road, right? How many times have we seen a slow start, Offense really struggling. The other
Yeah.
team super excited to play a top-ranked team, a top-5 team, whatever. You know it's going to be like that. But then there was this weird stretch where Auburn somehow they always find a way to be like down 1 or up 3 at halftime. It's like, how are they up? Like, how are they down 1 in that first half? It was so ugly. It was terrible. And then they got up by 8 or 9 at one point early in the second half, and it kind of felt like, okay, like maybe Auburn's going to pull away. I continue to be so impressed with Florida. I went and saw them in person when they played in Auburn Arena, and I was super impressed with Appleby, which, by the way, he had 26 points, and he hit some huge here, Bobby, I'm just going to throw a bunch at you, and you respond to what you want, okay? Number one,
Okay.
Florida hit tough shots. They hit tough shots all night.
Mhm.
They hit 10 threes to our 5. Percentages were close, but they just hit some really tough threes. They defended incredibly hard and incredibly well. And I think the book is out on the league from the league on that high screen and roll with Wendell and Kessler. Like, when's the last time we saw that lob? Like, when's the last time we saw that completely opening everything up? And then the other piece I would say is just not to harp on it, but man, just in a game like this against a team that desperately needs a huge win on their home floor, you just can't double up their turnovers and give up that many shots. You know, in the end, we only had 2 less shots than them, but you're right. It's hard not to think back to all those possessions where you don't even get a look, you know, and all sorts. Another thing, we shot 0 free throws in the first half, which means that you can blame the refs all you want. We could not get inside, and nothing came easy for this team offensively except for Jabari's jump shots.
Yep. Yeah. Wow, that was a lot.
Sorry,
That's okay. That's okay. The first thing I wanted to point out is absolutely yes, Florida hit some really tough shots. I noticed that down the stretch there were like 2 or 3 of them that I would call not bad shots, improbable shots.
Questionable.
Yeah, like Steph Curry is the only person with the green light to shoot that ball, and like if you make it, awesome, but if you miss it, the coaches are like, hey, don't shoot that again. That was not, because I mean, as far as I can remember, all of them had a guy, Auburn defender in their face. They were covered up and just buried it. And it really felt like one of those like fighting for your, March Madness life kind of games for Florida. And I thought that they did hit some really big shots down the stretch, especially considering like they ended up shooting 40% from the 3-point line, but it didn't feel like that throughout the game. And I think like 3 or 4 of their shots toward the end lifted that percentage a bit, because I don't think they shot that well throughout the game. I think teams definitely have maybe not figured it out per se, because Kessler's still been playing really well and Wendell will still play really well. But I do think teams have, at least they've cemented their strategy for defending that high screen and roll for Wendell and Kessler. You're right on the money with that. I also thought, and man, you and I both officiated before. It's not easy. However, sometimes I feel like these referees, they make it look astoundingly difficult to officiate a basketball game. And all I ask is for consistency. And many times it does not feel like Auburn is officiated the same way other teams are. Now, I know every one of you is going to say, Bobby, of course you're going to say that. You're an Auburn fan. And my counterpoint is, mind your business. But also, there's just something about seeing, like, I don't know, Alan Flanagan under the basket getting destroyed. And this happened in, I think it happened in the Vandy game, not in this game, but there was a play in the Vandy game where a Vandy guy, cleared a defensive rebound. Everybody else was down the court, but Jabari did what literally anyone ever does, and just kind of like swipes at the ball on his way running past, and they called a foul on that. I've never seen that called in a game before. And I just look at situations like that and think, would that have happened to anybody besides Auburn? I don't know what it is about Auburn, but it feels like, because I'm an Auburn fan, everything goes against us. But there were some really weak calls tonight. And whenever that puts Kessler in foul trouble, that's the point of all this, what I'm saying. When it puts Kessler in foul trouble, that drastically changes the game for Auburn, not only when he's on the bench because of foul trouble, but because of how he has to play in subsequent minutes, not having like his full like stable of fouls available. I mean, you saw it like the night and day difference between the Alabama games, and how big of a game he had when we played them at home, not being in foul trouble. That sort of thing, it as an Auburn homer, that tends to bother me. But I just think overall Auburn is going to get everybody's best shot. That's the reality of being in this position. It's something we haven't really experienced before as Auburn basketball fans. I'm not going to say the K word, but that other team that wears blue in the SEC, they're pretty darn good at basketball historically. So they know what it's like, as a fan base, to see other teams giving them their best shot. And it's something that we are new to. So I think that's something that, I'm having to adjust to as a fan. Maybe you are too. But when you see a game like today, and you see how hard Auburn fought, even with 17 turnovers, even with some really mind-boggling mistakes on both ends of the floor, to only lose by one against a possible tournament team in Florida, one that has always seemed to have Auburn's number in Gainesville, is still kind of encouraging, even with the loss. So I guess, did I respond to everything you said?
I don't know. We'll try to shorten it up a little bit. It takes a lot to beat this team. I think that's the encouraging thing. I remember watching the Arkansas game just thinking, wow, like, we're just not playing well at all. And Arkansas played a great game. I think Florida played a really good game tonight. So I'm encouraged by that. The big thing that I would point out, we'll point out a couple of stats maybe here, and then we'll jump into kind of our pregame notes to talk through some things. But we've consistently talked on this podcast about the depth and the athleticism are the things that make this team go. And tonight, I don't know if this is a record low. It's got to be close. 9 bench points. Usually we get 20 to 30, 35. I mean, just crazy numbers off the bench. 9 points is terrible. And even if you look big picture at like 3 guys in double figures had 51 out of our 62 points. There was no balanced scoring. You got very little from Flanagan, 0 from Jalen Williams, 5 from Wendell Green. There weren't enough contributions up and down. It was really a Jabari and Walker and KD hit free throws, and that was it. So just not enough contributions from our 9 or 10.
Yeah.
And because here's the thing, Florida's always like that. If you look at Florida's, they only had 5 bench points. They had 3 guys that played that scored none. I mean, they had Castleton and Appleby who just carried them scoring wise. So that should be an advantage for us that we did not get. I also felt like, didn't it feel like that Florida thrived in the chaos better than we did? And it feels like the last few weeks, Auburn usually with Bruce Pearl, it's like we want it up and down. We want to push the tempo. We want to turn them over. We want to get out and run. And it just felt like we didn't get that advantage today. Honestly, it felt like Florida was coming up with a lot of the loose balls, the 50-50 balls.
Yes, absolutely.
And they deserve a lot of credit for that. They are a tremendously athletic, long, big team, and I think they gave our guards trouble. We've talked about that a lot this year, small guards that we have. But look, like you said, the big picture, all that, and you lose by 1 where you have a chance in the end, and we did it. We were down 8 with 2 minutes to go. Had a really nice. I continue to be impressed with how we've handled being down late. It hasn't happened much this year, but we've extended the game well. We've managed the clock up until those last 2 possessions that everybody's going to focus on. We've done a lot of really good things, so that's encouraging. And I think the only other stat I would point out, I'll kick it to you if there's anything that stands out. We won rebounding, which is I can't believe we won offensive rebounding. It felt like they got way more than it says here. And just is that right? We only had 2 blocks tonight. So how about that for Florida for not getting blocked and swatted left and right? Like, that's a huge thing that I didn't really notice watching.
So that was the one thing that I was gonna point out, and I noticed it early in the game, and I only noticed it because like I recently rewatched like the Vandy game and the most recent Alabama game, like some of Auburn's stronger performances lately, and a common thread between all those games was that Auburn got up to like 6 blocks in like the first 10 minutes. I mean, it was just a block party in all those games, and they've had several other instances like that throughout the year. Today felt different. What's his name, Castleton. Yeah, he's all right, I guess. He did a decent job of shoving his forearm into Walker every time he went up to keep Walker from blocking his shot. And yeah, Florida did a good job of like, I don't even know how to describe it. Basically, it seemed like they positioned themselves individually, right, whenever they were shooting, to not allow Walker to be able to get up to the ball. They were scooping up under him, or they were, and look, I don't want to bring up the refs too much, but I swear, if I see Walker get called for another foul when he's doing this and they jump up into him and he gets called for a foul because he's 7'1", I'm going to lose my mind. That is insane to me. That's not a foul. Like there's such a thing as incidental contact in basketball. And I don't think some refs understand that, but that's beside the point. Florida actually did a good job with their offensive movement of not putting themselves in a lot of positions where Walker was just going to destroy them. They switched Walker onto smaller guards a lot more than I've seen any other team do. And so they then would swing the ball around to whoever Walker wasn't guarding. That person would take it to the bucket. And Auburn still defended the ball pretty well at the rim, but they didn't get a lot of those blocks that we've been used to. So that's why they only had 2 blocks tonight. And yeah, you got to give Florida credit for, scheming their offense that way.
Yeah, I thought 2 things. You made a great point there. A lot of people initially were like, oh, well, let's get a guard on Kessler. It's like, but people figured out that's not going to work very well either, because he can guard your guards outside. So it was kind of a great counter to say, okay, we're going to swing it to the other side and let you attack from there and try to hold Kessler away from the basket. The other thing I noticed, all those skip passes that we were missing, right?
Yes.
Florida really so when we're on offense and Kessler's in the post or somewhere inside, they really sink that opposite wing defender lower than most teams, I noticed. And that's what was leaving that skip pass wide open. However, there's a reason Florida wants you to do that, because it's a hard pass to make against a long athletic team. So I do give Florida a lot of credit. Did you have any problems with how we defended? I mean, we made a few mistakes, but I thought we defended fine. I didn't think
the defense. I other than the fact that we didn't get our like daily, our daily block quota, I didn't really have a problem with the defense itself. When you hold any team at home to 63 points, that's good. Again, I think a lot of the problems that we've talked about stem from the offense. And honestly, at the beginning of the year, I kind of worried that might be a problem. Again, going back to the point that people probably thought it would be the Jabari Smith show, and maybe you'd get 10 points from somebody else on any given night. Because, I mean, he's got like the smoothest jumper I think I've ever seen. Like, I'd just like to take a moment and say that I love watching Jabari Smith play basketball. And I love that over the last 2 games, he has gone out both nights and said, I'm taking over. I'm the guy. I'm putting the team on my back. And I respect that, because I think, we don't know what goes on in the locker room, but the announcers for each game will tell you, oh, his teammates always say they want him to, be more assertive or aggressive or whatever. We don't know if that's really true, but it should be true, because that man can ball. But on a night like this, when you defend so well, you'd like to see other guys, be able to step up and help shoulder a little bit of the load. And again, neither of us are college basketball players, so we say this, from an armchair coach's perspective. But I don't even want to say letdown, because again, if anybody could be a college basketball player, it was easy. Everyone would do it. But 5 points from Wendell Green and shooting 0-5 from the 3-point line, that's not what Auburn needs. And I know he holds himself to a higher standard than that. So I'm not trying to dump on him. And he did a lot of the other things really well. He had 5 assists, played 30 minutes, played good defense. But Auburn needs more out of him. They need that roughly 15 points he's been averaging in conference play, right? Like if you get that from him, that's more bench points. That's just more points total. And it probably opens up the offense a little bit more when he's more dangerous and the defense has to adjust to that.
Yeah. The only other thing I would add is they did a great job of neutralizing Kessler on the glass. He had 3 rebounds. I thought they did a really good job boxing him out. I thought they just battled. They were gritty inside. They really went after loose balls hard. I'm shocked we won rebounding, actually. After watching the game, I wouldn't have guessed that.
You want to know why that? You want to know why it was? Why that happened?
Why is that?
Devin Cambridge. Devin Cambridge has become a rebounding monster. He had 6 today.
Yeah, but didn't it feel like the whole time that they were just getting? I don't know. It felt like they were. I'm shocked they only had 8 offenve rebounds.
It felt like that in the first half.
Yeah.
In the first half, they were grabbing offensive rebounds like they were candy. Like it was actually kind of insane. Sorry, I actually just thought of something else I wanted to bring up because it is mystifying to me, and this seems to happen more in road games than anything else. There are these weird random stretches of basketball games where it looks like somebody coated the ball in Vaseline, but only when Auburn is on offense. Like the ball's just slipping out of their hands, out of bounds, or they're bobbling it around, or they just can't get 2 hands on it. And it's mystifying to me. And then later in the game, they're dribbling between their legs, going into traffic and hitting tough layups and threes and playing completely differently. But then sometimes the play just gets so sloppy. It's very odd. I don't know what the source of that could be.
And I think what happens is, it's easy to be all like, obviously Auburn's been on a historic season this year and you're winning a lot of close games. And, I never feel like our offense is as productive as it is just like beautiful. I mean, I know we have some really nice sets. I know we have some good things that we do, but compared to some other teams, I don't think that's our strength. Kind of like what Jackson was hinting at. I don't think we're great in drawing random things up out of timeouts. And we're great out of bounds plays. We're great on offense and defense in that area, but just doesn't. So I think on the nights when it's ugly or when it's ugly, but the results aren't there, people pay way more attention to it than I think a lot of the time we're a little sloppy and a little out of control and a little, that's kind of our thing. I just think it gets maximized when you're having a day where you're struggling in a lot of different ways. So let's do this. Let's do this before we get too far in. I don't want to go too long.
It's a 3-hour podcast. Stay tuned, everybody.
Got stuff to do. So I'm going to go through some pregame thoughts and we'll see where this leads us. And then if you can be kind of summarizing some other things. And then we're going to go player by player and just do a quick rundown of their performance. So number 1 for Jackson. Jackson did get his in before he left the States. Can Kessler stay out of foul trouble against Castleton with the away game refs? I'm going to defend Auburn or defend Florida here a little bit. I mean, Kessler may have played 5 minutes less, which I think the reason people may be reacting to that is because Florida went on a run after he got that 3rd foul in the second half.
Yeah.
He didn't, I didn't feel like, I thought Castleton just kind of out-battled him in a lot of ways. Castleton's a great player. People forget he's an all-SEC first-team player. So Kessler didn't do much, in my opinion, to warrant being in foul trouble, but he didn't foul out. He still played 26 minutes. But to me, the fact that he played 26 minutes with 3 rebounds and I don't know if he had 0, 1, or 2 blocks, but one of those numbers, I just didn't think it was Kessler's best night, but he's going up against a really, really good college experienced player in Castleton. So you've talked about the refs some. Do you have any other thoughts on the foul trouble Kessler stuff?
Yeah, it's just frustrating. I think there is at least one call a game that, shouldn't get called on him. I mean, that I will say part of that is the reality of being a 7'1" center and being one who, he's pretty assertive in seeking out blocks, I think that's just going to happen. It doesn't mean I like it when it does happen, but listen, I always joke with my wife that I just hope that these refs wake up with minor ankle discomfort the next day, just I don't want them to actually I don't want any actual bodily harm to come to them, but I want them to, just feel a little discomfort for their poor performance.
Part of it, though, we've seen it forever. if you're a big guy, you just have to be extra cautious not to pick up extra ones and bring it on yourself. And I think he does a great job of avoiding, compared to other centers we've had in the past. He's probably the best I've ever seen it.
Oh yeah.
He just doesn't get himself in bad spots to draw extra fouls, because you're going to get one or two bad ones. The Tuscaloosa game was a disaster. Of all of them were bad, all but one. And this one, I wouldn't put quite on that level. I was more, the foul trouble didn't bother me. I do think it was at a key moment in the second half. And great job by ESPN, by the way, showing 3 replays of his charge, and not one of them ever showed where the guy's feet were, whether he was outside the cylinder. I think he was, but we have no idea. So
I know. Literally, I watched that charge and was like, was he in the circle? It really looked like he was right under the basket. I'm not sure about that one.
And then we never saw a replay that validated or invalidated.
Yeah, it's very, very convenient.
So thank you. Number 2 for Jackson was, can the guards have a big game after being carried by the front court in the last game? That's a big old no. We'll talk about it more when we talk about the players, but I think the backcourt size and just the way they're being defended. I'm not smart enough. I haven't pieced it together yet. Jackson had a great question. By the way, we interviewed Stephen Pearl last night, and that's going to go up on Monday. And it was one of my favorite interviews we've done. One of the things we didn't get to ask him, but one of the questions we had was, it feels like we're in the middle of this chess match offensively, and other teams have adjusted their game plan, their strategy against us as they've gotten more tape on what we do. And it's like we're waiting for that next counter move. And what we're going to have to find a way to unlock these guards, like you said, with Wendell's production and stuff. We've got to get them in the flow of the offense and being efficient and getting more in the scoring column. Because again, you're talking about Zepp, Katie, and Wendell had a total of 17 points. And, and again, most of that was Katie at the free throw line.
Yeah.
So anyway, they were not good. Florida did a great job of neutralizing them. They gave them trouble in both games this year. They're really long and athletic. And honestly, like we've touched on, they had a great plan. And I think Auburn's coaches have it in their, they've got to adjust for the next one. Number 3, Flanagan. Bounce back game. Can Flanagan bounce back and have a solid game? He's fine. 2 points, 1 shot, 5 rebounds, 23 minutes. Yeah. 2 turnovers. He's just not. I love that we got him. There was a nice little play. We got him diving to the basket, and he really patiently finished after he almost traveled 3 times. So he was okay, but I think Jackson's like the biggest Flanagan guy in the world. So that's always one of his pregame notes is tracking Flanagan. What are your kind of, you haven't been on the podcast ranting about this stuff every game. Where do you think Flanagan, how do you think he was tonight? And then just how do you look at Flanagan big picture in this season right now?
Enough, I feel like he was more of a non-factor positively or negatively than he has been in recent games. I know you and I have talked about this, off camera, but I am, I don't want to use the word sad because that sounds melodramatic. Where he was last year, right? Because I just, what I see in him is hesitancy, and he seems unsure of himself, in everything he does. And they keep talking about how he's not even back 100% athletically yet. He's obviously cleared to play, and he puts forth good effort on defense, and he's a good rebounder. But on offense, sometimes he looks so unsure of what he's doing, and that's a little discouraging. And it's like that seeps into everything. Now today was weird because he had at least one of those really bad hurl it into the nacho stand kind of passes, but other than that, in other games, he'll try to skip a pass that he shouldn't through a defender's legs, or he'll just bobble the ball or drop it. He can't seem to drive to the basket without having a charge drawn on him, and his jumper isn't falling. It's just all the progress he had made as a scorer last year just seems to have evaporated. And I hate that for him because he's a tremendous athlete. And last year, while Auburn was kind of awaiting, the NCAA's, stupidity to end with Sharif Cooper. And Flanagan was, I would argue, the main reason Auburn was able to kind of keep the ship afloat last year until Sharif was able to come back. And so it does, I guess, yeah, it does make me a little sad to see Flanagan not playing as well as I believe he can. And he's still got the perfect, the perfect, the perfect build, the perfect athleticism, the perfect body type to be an NBA guy. And I think he's got the perfect skill set when he's on his game, or the perfect potential to be a really great college player. And he showed that last year. So I think part of it has to do with him having to come back from an Achilles injury, which is such a hard thing to come back from for a regular person, much less, a college athlete. And then he's joining a team that had been playing really well without him, coming into conference play. So I think he's trying to find his place in the offense. And honestly, like it did occur to me, since we talked about it, I think a lot of the looks that Jabari has been getting, or the way they set up plays for Jabari, that seems like somewhat similar positioning to how they would try to set Flanagan up sometimes for plays. Now, Flanagan didn't quite do the turnaround jumper like Jabari, because Jabari is more like Kevin Durant than any player Auburn has had. But Flanagan would get a lot of those ISO looks where he'd post up on a guy, up toward the 3-point line, and then go to work from there. And he'd be able to hit a mid-range jumper from like the key, from the elbow, or get the ball inside and muscle his way up for a layup. This year, it's just not there. It's like he's lost a step. So I think there are a lot of factors that play into why he hasn't quite looked the same. I want him to limit the turnovers. That's the thing. Like, you don't have to be as explosive of a scorer as you were last year. Just take care of the ball. Don't turn yourself into an offensive liability on some plays. And the sad reality is, on several plays, he has been. Now, he offsets, in my opinion, he offsets that by still being, a very aggressive on ball defender, and he rebounds well, and he plays hard on defense. And so I know that's why he's getting minutes. Like, he's too athletic and too naturally good to keep on the bench. But on offense, like, he needs to have this better balance of confidence, but also playing under control. Because I think right now he's not doing either one of those well. He's not confident, and he's also kind of playing out of control.
Yeah, I agree. We've used the step slow term a lot, and defense and rebounding is continuing to be the theme for Bruce. That's what he's been publicly asking about for him. I think that's where the focus has to be, and I saw that tonight. I think he really did battle defensively. He's not there. Anyway, my pregame thoughts. I hate to be a soothsayer, but I had a bad feeling. I said turnovers were a problem against Florida the first time. Can Auburn win the turnover battle and take care of the ball? That's a big fat no. 17-11 in turnovers. Just felt like not as much the points off turnovers. It was the missed opportunities to get shots up. Just felt like we could not get shots up consistently, which is how you score. Number two, we already talked about Kessler foul trouble. That was one of my keys, and I kind of touched on the Castleton matchup, and that proved out, I think. Then number three, I said, can Auburn make Florida beat them with half-court offense and limit their easy points in transition? I thought we did keep it. We kept them in the half-court a lot. They only scored 63. They hit some tough shots on us. But they won fast break points 13-7. They did almost double us up in getting out and finishing. But I think we did okay, like we've talked about defensively, and they're not a prolific half-court offensive team. It just stinks that we left so many opportunities on the offensive end. Yeah. It could have kind of swung the results of this game.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I think a big part of Auburn's game is KD Johnson or Wendell Green getting downhill off of a defensive rebound or a turnover, and either getting to the line or getting a quick layup. And Florida did a good job today of taking that away from Auburn, on that side of the ball. So, just looking at like the points in the paint stat too, that Auburn won 26-14, you would think that might offset the fact that they lost fast break points, but I think that played more into Florida's favor because as a result, like you brought up before, if you take away KD Johnson's 6 free throws, you're talking about 11 combined points for Auburn's guards on pretty bad shooting. Just doing some quick math. 3 of 19 from the field, 0 of 8 from the 3-point line for Auburn's guards. That's not what you need out of the guards. Like, not only considering the fact that Wendell usually plays a lot better than that, he usually knocks down at least 1 3, shooting 15% from the field just isn't going to get it done. And then you combine that with the turnovers, and Auburn's offense was just very inefficient today. I think that's what killed him.
Yep, I agree. I asked Bobby for pregame notes, but then Jackson did his because I didn't have access to the Twitter page. We're still working on that. So anyway, you made a great point. I just want to quickly shout these out. You said, can Auburn keep up their 3-point shooting? 36% is better for this team. They've been in the low 30s for the year. They've been in the 20s a lot, in the teens on the road. So I was happy to see that. You said, how much will Jabari continue to assert himself? You were right on there. We saw a continuation of that. That's great. And then the other thing, game plan wise, was I want to see Walker get more scoring opportunities on the low block, and we just didn't see any of that today.
No. Against a guy like Castleton, that's going to be a little bit tougher. I mean, Walker's really good, but I would say that actually one of the weaknesses of his game right now is his consistent ability to get his own looks on the low block. And you could say like, oh, that's a pretty big deficiency in his game, but the fact that he does everything else so well more than makes up for it. So I think his ability to take those entry passes in the post and then create something for himself, that'll just take his game to a whole other level. But I would just like to see Auburn continue to help him develop that aspect of his game. So I guess this might not have been the game to try and do that.
Well, it's just not part of what Bruce does a ton. I mean,
I know.
It's a dinosaur a little bit outside in the college game in general and in NBA even at this point.
Yeah.
But man, you have seen a lot of flashes for Walker. It would be really nice to get him a few touches every game, kind of in that space.
I mean, he knocked down. He was he had our best 3-point percentage. By the way, can we shout out to? Matt, I cannot stress how hilarious it is to me that Auburn's guards went 0 of 8 from the 3-point line, and Auburn's front court went 5 of 6 from the 3-point line. That is hysterical to me, and just cements the fact that Auburn has the best front court in college basketball. Don't at me.
That's true. It's true. Well, let's jump into that real quick. So I'm going to cut a couple of these guys out because we've already talked a lot about them, but let's just start at the top here. KD Johnson, 12 points, 6 of 6 at the line, 3 of 8 shooting, 4 rebounds, 5 turnovers that you touched on. He has his moments. I've been very complimentary of KD the last few weeks. I do think it's hard to say outside of the 5 turnovers, but outside of the 5 turnovers, he did some nice things. He continues to be a better defender than he was early in the year in terms of like the simple defensive plays, not necessarily we call them the Hamburglar moments where he steals and runs and does something crazy. I don't know what your quick thoughts on KD.
He has been passing a lot more, and I like that. He had a beautiful feed at the end of the first half under to Walker. Now that was sandwiched in between a couple of his throwing the ball out into the parking lot turnovers. And there was another one where I think I don't remember what it was. He caused another turnover like right after, or no, maybe he had the pass to Walker and then hit a floater. So he ended the first half really well. So anyway, yes, he's been a lot of his game has improved lately, but he's still got to clean up the turnovers. Like, he still just needs to be a little more under control across the board. So
we've talked a lot about Jabari, but I refuse to not talk about Jabari a little more anytime you have an opportunity. I think the most exciting thing, obviously he's hot from 3 right now. Obviously he scores 28 in a losing effort. He only has 2 turnovers, 7 rebounds to lead the team. But how about getting to the free throw line 11 times? I think for him, that's a huge development. We've talked a lot about how he's struggling to get to the basket and finish. He did that a couple times today. So I really think you're starting to see the ascension of his overall game.
Yes.
And I want to just give everybody 30 seconds to gush about Jabari. I mean, why not?
I have never seen such a silky smooth jumper from anybody in an Auburn uniform. And like I've seen Bryce Brown play, Chuma Okeke had a beautiful stroke, but like Jabari's just on another level, man. I hate that we only have a few more games left to watch him in an Auburn uniform, because depending on how his NBA career pans out, he might end up going down as the best Auburn basketball player ever. And I love Charles Barkley. I think he is an American treasure, but Jabari is on another level, man. With that jumper, he's already NBA ready, and he's already a great on-ball defender, great defensive rebounder. As other elements of his game continue to evolve, like if he develops a quick crossover, watch out. No one will be able to guard him.
He's also the most awkward open court dribbler with his talent that I've ever seen. It continues to make me laugh. He had a really awkward transition play where I was like, oh no, this is because he has moments where he's not the best handle. He hasn't been great against the press at times.
Yeah.
But man, he got into his shot though somehow at the end of the awkward dribbling and nailed a three. So he's terrific. Enjoy it. As many games as we get to watch him in an Auburn uniform, I'm glad he's starting to really break out. Zep Jasper, I'm the president of the Zep Jasper fan club. He's the only guy that didn't turn it over tonight in 18 minutes. I do think his foul trouble was significant. I think it forced us to do something. I didn't like that Wendell played 30 minutes with how productive he was. I think that should have been a little more even. It probably would have been without the early foul trouble on Zep, and then he got in trouble again in the second half. One assist, and he didn't, he took one shot, missed it, one rebound, one assist. It's not about that. If you know Zep, it's the defense, it's the intensity, and it's the calmness. And, I don't think this is fair at all, but I do think people are going to look at some of these late possessions and be like, maybe you take the ball, but I don't personally, I don't believe you take Wendell off the court. He's been our closer all year. He's won us a lot of games. You can't panic about a regular season road loss by 1 point. But if Zep's in that game, I can guarantee you
the ball's going to Jabari.
Going to get in that position. It's going to get somewhere. So.
Yeah. Zep is he might be the best glue guy I've ever seen in an Auburn uniform. I hate it when I see people on the internet going, why is it even a big deal he was out? He only averages 5 points a game. I'm like, you don't understand basketball at all, do you? It's not like the reason he's so important to Auburn is not because of how many points he does or does not score. It's how he takes care of the ball, how he always guards the other team's best guard, and how he's a willing distributor and a great compliment to KD Johnson and Jabari Smith, as Auburn's primary scorers in that lineup. So he's fantastic. He's one of my favorite players I've ever seen. I love a basketball player who works hard, does not complain when he doesn't get any shots, and understands his role. He embraces it. And that's what makes him so important to this team. That's why I'm so excited that, at least as far as I know, he's coming back next year. That's going to be so critical for Auburn.
Yep, I agree. I love him. I do think, though, he's got offensive game in him. And when we're in this kind of funk on offense, I think everybody, and Bruce said it after the game today, we're at our best when everybody contributes. And that includes Zep. I know I brag on him for all the non-scoring stuff, but look, we're at a place where I do think we need some scoring from different sources. So I'm hoping to see him kind of reemerge at some point.
Just one thing before you move, he averaged like 15 points at College of Charleston, didn't he? Yep. Like he was with their leading scorer, I thought.
Yep. And he scored in double digits a lot this year. I mean, he's capable.
Yeah.
But he also defers, and he needs to defer. He's great with that starting lineup because you want the shots to get to KD, to get to Jabari, to get to Kessler. Yeah. And I think that's why it works well with him starting and Wendell coming off the bench.
Yeah.
Speaking of Wendell, we're going to skip Kessler and Flanagan because we've talked about them a lot. Wendell, 5 points. I know we've talked about him too. 5 points, 5 assists, 3 turnovers, 2 for 10, 0 for 5 from 3, 1 rebound. He's usually a big rebounding guard for his size. Just not great. I think the question I would have for you is, do you see anything that teams are doing differently against him compared to when he was just torching people from 3 with the lobs, with the kickouts? Like, have you noticed over the last few weeks as he's been struggling a little more? Anything that you could point out?
It seems like teams have been pressuring him at half court more. Teams have been trying to force him to either side. I think teams are realizing that with his quickness, you have to shrink the court. Oops. Sorry, little technical issue. You have to you can edit this out, right, Matt? We'll fix it in post. You have to shrink the court for Wendell, right? He's too quick and he's too crafty getting into the paint. And so I think teams are realizing that. And so they're bringing up double teams, but they're also positioning the double teamer to not get beat on the screen. So I think they're taking away that high screen and roll with Kessler and forcing Wendell to get the ball out of his hands. Or if they're able to get Wendell to dribble toward the sideline, they're trapping him there. And I mean, at 5'10", which really means he's probably about 5'8", there's not much room for him to operate. And so I think teams have kind of realized that if you throw a big body at him and force him into a tight space, then he is far less or you can force him into some mistakes. Wendell's crafty. He finds a way to make plays anyway. But tonight, and look, in fairness to Wendell, sometimes you're just off. Sometimes your shots just aren't dropping. There were a couple of those threes that, like, when they're in the air, I was like, oh, this is the one. Like, this is when he's going to get one to drop and Auburn's going to get fired up from it. And that's where the run's going to start. And it didn't happen. So
I think people are giving him that mid-range floater, and it seems like they're keeping him away from the rim at getting layups, and they're letting him have that logo three because you have to. I mean, like, they're out on him, but they're going to give him that. They're going to try to hound him on a close three-pointer, a good look, and then they almost like release him to the middle, but they're keeping that big guy back on Kessler, for the lob. And I think he's going to have to. He's shown the ability to hit that floater. I think that's a key. The mid-range for him is going to be maybe something that unlocks. Jalen Williams only played 7 minutes because Jabari played 33, as he should have. No points, nothing really to say. I just feel like Jalen's been so close all year. Even his 2 shots tonight, I felt like were really close, good looks. Just hasn't quite been able to get in a consistent rhythm. He had a really good game against Florida the first time. He's just really suffering the most because of how good Jabari is, and Jalen plays it 4. I thought when Kessler was in foul trouble, I thought we might get some Jalen Williams center action.
I was about to say the same thing. I'm actually kind of surprised, only because of Williams' ability to handle the ball. He's a pretty good ball handler for his height. He's very athletic. He goes up and gets some tough rebounds. He and Cambridge both. But Williams, like, everything he does looks so smooth. Like, it almost looks like he's not running super fast because, like, everything he does is just like a long sweeping motion of some kind. I'm surprised, especially in this game, that Cardwell got 14 minutes and got up 5 shots and Jay only had 7 minutes. I'm surprised that the coaching staff has not gone with the, like, death lineup a lot more this year, putting Jay at the 5. And maybe it's a defensive thing. Maybe you like, obviously you don't want to keep Kessler off the court because he's way too important to the defense. And Cardwell has actually played really well as a defender. He's a little too foul happy sometimes, but I guess when you're the backup center, you can afford to be a little more aggressive because nobody's expecting 20 to 25 minutes out of you. But I'm surprised, just as a change of pace, they haven't thrown Williams at the 5 and let Auburn completely space the floor and kind of play that Warriors death lineup style.
I think it's a risk, I'm sure they were toying with it when he got his 3rd. Do you take that gamble on offense to pull Castleton away? But then do you run the risk of Jalen's a really good defender and bigger than people think, but that's going to be a tough matchup for him against Castleton on the inside. So maybe and Jalen, to be fair, hasn't been playing great. So maybe they felt a little uncomfortable doing that in a big spot. So anyway, Devin Cambridge, the people I was watching with today, like, how cool is it that we have a dunk guy? Like, that's what he does. He's just a dunk.
Yeah.
Like, it's very rare. 2 points, made his 1 layup, 6 rebounds, like you said. That's become his thing. 1 turnover in 19 minutes. The minutes between him and Flanagan continue to come close to even.
Yeah.
I don't think they're going to take Flan out from the lineup, but I think you're just going to see a little more Cambridge, a little less Flanagan, which is probably good for both of them.
Well, and I, to touch on that point a little bit more, you brought this up, off camera a while back. Auburn, I think, could benefit a lot from more scoring production from the three. If you look at the lineup across the board, they're not getting much production out of the three spot. And I mean, I know the assumption before the year started was that like Flanagan would come back and he would provide, kind of like a third or fourth, maybe even second best scoring option behind Jabari. And that just hasn't quite, hasn't quite shaped up. On the other hand, I do think Cambridge's shot selection has, like, his understanding of his shot selection has gone through the roof this year, because last year he would hoist up way too many threes. And the ironic thing is his breakout game was against South Carolina in like 2019. He hit like 7 threes. He's not that great of a shooter, actually. He's good at a ton of other stuff, but his shooting has never been like, his strong point. So I think him focusing on his defense and his rebounding actually has benefited the team the most. And it's been a way for him to like put his athleticism and his skill set, to the best use. And of course, a Devin Cambridge alley-oop always brings the house down. Yep. So I've actually been really happy with how he has developed as a player, and not seeking shots as much. He wants to do a lot more of the little things this year.
Me too. I'm very proud of how he's developed. I keep bragging on him for his defense. It's so much better than it used to be. He's finding his role, and I think you could put him in that Zep camp. You put Flanagan. I think we need some guys to kind of find their offensive rhythm, their scoring rhythm to moving forward. Cardwell's the last guy. You mentioned 1 of 5, 2 points, 3 rebounds. Harder matchup for him against Castleton. He has been really efficient and good in his minutes, his limited minutes. Got a few more tonight with Kessler in a little bit of foul trouble. He brings what he brings. It did feel like it was a little quiet night for him in terms of not as many theatrics maybe. Yeah. Any thoughts on him?
Not really. I thought he played pretty well considering the circumstances. I don't know, man. I guess when he goes like, 3 or 4 from the field, because, he has games like that where, he gets like 3 or 4 lobs or, put backs off of offensive rebounds, and you're like, oh, great. He's got 8 points, very efficient from the field. But on a night like tonight, when, your offense has not been as efficient as maybe it should have been, it's just a numbers thing. You kind of get lost in the numbers and forget the actual flow of the game. But looking at the box score and seeing 1 of 5 from the field, for Dylan Cardwell, that's not quite what you want to see. So I guess none of his shots were dumb. I just like to see him be a little more under control under the basket when he's finishing. So
it's fair.
What have you got queued up for us?
Well, so I guess let's kind of transition last few minutes, big picture. So Auburn's 12-2 now. You kind of give up the 2-game lead. I guess we'll talk through as we record this. The big games today in the SEC are done. Kentucky beats Alabama at home, so they are now 1 game back of Auburn. Auburn lost. South Carolina beat LSU at home, which is interesting. We'll talk about that group in a minute. Big one for us, Arkansas 58-48 over Tennessee in a parent rock fight. So Tennessee loses, which we were probably all rooting for after Auburn lost. So Arkansas and Tennessee are 2 back. Kentucky's 1 back. And obviously Auburn plays Tennessee on Saturday. So it's nice that potentially if Auburn takes care of business at home against Ole Miss, they're not in danger of Tennessee doesn't have the opportunity to say, oh, if we beat Auburn, we're tied for the lead or whatever. That could still happen, but it makes it less likely. So there's this clear
encouraging
4 teams at the top: Auburn, Kentucky, Arkansas, Tennessee. Then there's this clear 4 middle teams: LSU, Alabama, who have underachieved a little bit, and then Florida and South Carolina, who are South Carolina's sneaking around. Like, I don't know if many people thought they'd be 7-7 in the league. That's our last home game. That's one to track. They're pretty hot. You beat LSU. That's significant. LSU's got a lot of talent. And then Mississippi State, who is our last home game, is 6-7 right now, and I guess they do not play today. Maybe they do. Hang on.
I feel like they do. I think
Why is this not showing then? Let's see.
I don't know.
Play tomorrow?
Wait, when do they play?
Oh,
yeah, they play tomorrow.
They play tomorrow against Missouri, so on the road. So anyway,
Garbage.
Too much.
A Sunday night college basketball game. What is that?
Maybe that's one of the makeup games from I think they had maybe a cancellation due to COVID early in the conference schedule or something like that. But anyway, I guess the big picture thought is, Auburn made their job a little more difficult by losing today. They're still in first place by themselves. 4 games left. We've talked about on this podcast, we don't want to share with anybody. We don't want to share championships. We want it all to ourselves. But at this point, and I think I saw Bruce's message to the team as they were breaking down their sad locker room was, we're going to see what we're made of. And that's exactly what I thought after our game ended. This will be the first real adversity that this team has faced all year, because you just gave a lot of ground back to some really good teams. And we've got to see if they can pick themselves back up at home against Ole Miss this week.
Yeah. Hopefully after each loss this year so far, Auburn has responded. To get a game at home, it helps that you're playing, an Ole Miss team that is not quite as good, maybe as some people thought they were going to be. So, they've got a good opportunity to pick themselves back up and keep that lead in the regular season conference race.
So, and we've talked, Ole Miss is a hard matchup for us. Bruce has struggled with Kermit Davis in his kind of matchup zone at times. A lot of people remember they hit us in the mouth pretty good in Oxford in the first half on the road there. So that'll be a big, we got to there's no time to lick our wounds. We need to keep our undefeated streak in Auburn Arena on Wednesday, and then I'll be in Knoxville for the big Tennessee game next week. Kentucky, if you're curious, they play LSU this week on Wednesday night at home. They go to Arkansas, they host Ole Miss, and they go to Florida. So that is not an easy closing 4 for Kentucky. Maybe, if you're an Auburn fan, you're definitely going to be rooting for them to lose one more or 2 more, or whatever, at least lose one more to maybe give us some wiggle room. Because look, Tennessee and Mississippi State on the road are going to be hard. If you don't believe that this league is challenging and that it's hard to win on the road by now, you're just not paying attention. It's really difficult. Tennessee was as hot as anybody, and they scored 48 points in Fayetteville. It's just a tough league.
Yeah, I actually did not expect that, considering how they kind of tossed Kentucky around. That's very surprising to me that they only scored 48. And we've talked about this a ton. This is the deepest the SEC has ever been in basketball, I think. It's got to be, right? Literally anyone can beat anyone on a given night. So it's equally encouraging, because if you lose a game, it's not the end of the world. Nobody looks at you and thinks, wow, you're a terrible team. But it also makes your job of trying to win the regular season title and then the conference tournament title and then make it to March Madness be even tougher. So knowing that, it makes me really glad that we have role as the head coach, because I could not imagine a Tony Barbie Auburn team in this league right now. We'd be Georgia. We would be Georgia right now, but probably with no wins.
Well, you're right. We're still in a great spot. I think, I guess the other piece of news, the tournament committee put out their one group of the top 16 teams in their bracket. Yep. Auburn was number 2 overall before this loss. People are going to get all worked up about the polls and about the, whatever. To me, the goal has been all year to win the SEC regular season. If you do that, you're going to be fine. You'd rather be a 1 seed. You'd rather get some of the geographic advantages. But if you've looked at the tournament sites, there aren't many other than New Orleans being the Final Four host. So, my goals are kind of to keep Auburn in that 1 and 2 seed line, win the SEC championship, take our, we'll see in the SEC tournament what happens. But, man, so close, something we've only accomplished 3 times ever to win the SEC. We've got 4 games left. It's going to be a close race. I wish it wasn't going to be as close. Today would have been and Bruce said it. He said this week, this is a huge game because it would really set us apart and give us some space and some distance. And we just couldn't quite get it done. And for all the reasons we've talked about. So Bobby, I'll ask you if you have any last thoughts, but thank you for, jumping in, talking a loss with us. You and I have done podcasts and stuff before, so appreciate you repaying the favor here. I know Jackson does too. So thanks for being here. And who knows, I don't know exactly our plan yet, but we're going to try to have some different people on while Jackson's out. So you may hear Bobby again, everybody. We'll find out.
I kind of hate that you asked me to do the one regulation loss for Auburn. So I'd just like to point out that this was not my fault, I think. And if it was, if I'm on the show again and it's for an Auburn loss, then I will never do this podcast again. That is a promise. What are you doing?
I had to plug my.
Hey, man.
All right. Sorry about that. My computer was about to die and I tried to catch it and I couldn't. I literally plugged it in and it went off. So
oh no.
Apologies. Anyway, you were saying it's not your fault for this loss, and I agree. So any other closing thoughts for about this game or this season as we move forward?
Oh man, I don't know how much of it might have been caught because you're recording all of this, but while you were freeze frame, from my perspective, I was actually getting into an impassioned story about how glorious it is that Auburn basketball is in the place that it is, because as you know, I was a student at Auburn from 2010 to 2013. And that was literally right before Bruce got there. So that was during the dark ages with Tony Barbie, who seems like the saddest, most miserable man I've ever seen in my life. It seems like he's never been happy about anything. But at Auburn Arena, you could roll up to a basketball game probably 10 minutes before tip-off. And I did this several times and just go stand center court on the front row of the student section and watch Auburn lose at basketball. To go from that to students camping out before games like the night before is just unfathomable to me. To see Auburn grinding its way through the toughest the SEC has ever been to being number one in the conference and even reaching the number one ranking overall, for the first time in program history is just it's unreal. And so as a basketball fan for a big portion of my life, it was always kind of a letdown to me that Auburn was so terrible for so long at basketball. So to see this program built up the way it has been under Bruce Pearl has been very encouraging. And I love that I get to look forward to, for several weeks out of my year, watching Auburn basketball play twice a week. I think that is so special. And I think if you're an Auburn basketball fan, just like the two of us, you need to appreciate this and be sad when Auburn loses, but the next day you should be over it because they get to play again in a couple of days and they get to rebound from that and prove that they are still a force to be reckoned with in the conference. And that's the position Bruce Pearl has put them in. It's a special, special thing. And if any of you, listeners were an Auburn student or, were following Auburn basketball before Bruce Pearl, you understand how amazing this is. So the loss against Florida, it sucked, but it happens. It's very rare for any team to go undefeated in conference play, to go undefeated throughout their entire regular season or whole season. So that was probably never going to happen. All of Auburn's goals are still ahead of them. And it's just not, you can't even put it into words. So.
Yeah, I agree. You're right. Anybody who was there knows the I feel like people who were there in the dark days really appreciate this even on a different level. So thanks, man. I really appreciate you joining us. Thanks for filling in. Sorry it was on a loss, but we will, I know you and me will be talking as the rest of this season goes on, whether it's on the podcast or off. So appreciate you, buddy.
Oh, of course. Thanks for having me on. War Eagle.
All right, War Eagle, everybody. We will be back Wednesday, post Ole Miss, with somebody and me talking about Auburn basketball. War Eagle, keep peacocking. Don't back down. This team is still awesome.